Oh, okay, there we go. Now we're live. Awesome. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome everybody to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker-Carl, and I'm here with my good friends Catherine and Dan. And today we are talking about Atomic Habits, Chapter 10. And this chapter talks about how to find and fix the causes of your bad habits. So this is a real interesting chapter. And but before we get going, I want to give my friends an opportunity to jump out and introduce themselves, and then we can chat about this chapter.
Morning, this is Catherine Clement in Boulder, Colorado. Happy Solstice Weekend.
Dan Sipstick in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I was loving yesterday because it was the longest day of the year, and I love this time of year, and not looking forward to days getting shorter now. I hate that.
Yeah, I don't like the shorter days either. I like longer days. That's so much better. But we still have a few left for the summer, so I'm glad about that. And I don't know. I'm more of a day person than I am a night person. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm definitely prefer the daytime. So I don't know. My husband and I were talking about that not too long ago. How it was like I could move up to Alaska or something like that. Where they have the longer days for part of the year, but then when it went the other way and it was dark for most of the most of the day into the night, or the whole day and night, I wouldn't be able to deal with that. I'd have to be down here where it's like light most of the time. But yeah, I could have 24-hour daylight. That'd be all right. um, okay, so guys, this chapter 10, how to find and fix the causes of your bad habits. And this one was really interesting because it talked about where cravings come from. And he was saying that every behavior has a surface level craving and a deeper underlying motive. He goes on to say, I often have a craving that goes something like this. I want to eat tacos. If you were to ask me why I want to eat tacos, I would say because I need food to survive. But the truth is, somewhere deep down, I am motivated to eat tacos because I have to eat. What? Oh, he said, I'm sorry, I misread that. He said, I often have a craving that goes something like this. I want to eat tacos. If you were to ask me why I want to eat tacos, I wouldn't say because I need food to survive. But the truth is, somewhere deep down, I am motivated to eat tacos because I have to eat to survive. The underlying motive is often to obtain food and water, even if my specific craving is for a taco. And then he goes on and mentions some of these underlying motives. He says, so here's just kind of a list: to conserve energy, to obtain food and water, to find, love, and reproduce, to connect and bond with others, to win social acceptance and approval, reduce uncertainty, achieve status and prestige. And then he goes on to say, a craving is just a specific manifestation of a deeper underlying motive. Your brain did not evolve with a desire to smoke cigarettes or to check Instagram or to play video games. At a deep level, you simply want to reduce uncertainty and relieve anxiety, to win social acceptance and approval, or to achieve status. He says, look at nearly any product that is habit forming, and you'll see that it does not create a new motivation, but rather latches on to underlying motives of human nature. And and then he kind of gives some more examples of, like, for finding love and reproduce, using Tinder or the Tinder app; to connect and bond with others, browsing Facebook; to win social acceptance and approval, posting on Instagram; reduce uncertainty, searching on Google; achieve status and prestige, playing video games, or any other kind of thing where we're talking about becoming successful. But I thought it was just really interesting how he connected all of these things that we supposedly want to do with that, like, deeper underlying need that we have as humans in different ways. And I'm like, well, that makes a lot of sense, is that obviously we have these kind of like instinctual things that we would have had in back in the Stone Age when we were just trying to survive, and then how that's kind of translated into the now with modern everything. And it's just really interesting. So What do you guys think about that?
Well, for me, it's interesting because, of course, definitely we all need food and water. Uh, that's and it's funny because at work, we get fed lunches through the employer that I work for. It's nothing greater, a lot of times because they're Burmese, they eat a lot of rice and stuff of that nature and things like that. But I've never been a big lunch person, not even really a big breakfast person. I love breakfast food and I love, but I don't really eat a lot. And people look at me like, eat, eat, eat. And it's like, well, I'm not really. But then in the evening time, I tend to get a little more hungry and a little more tend to want to eat a little bit more. And so I eat, more stuff at night, like before I go to, before, a couple hours before I go to bed or whatever. I think that's my body's way of storing up what I need for the next day or, to get me through. But I've also realized that through some things I've read about, like where they say don't drink all your calories, and I tend to drink, hate to say it, a lot of soda and stuff and other things, and I probably don't get enough water like a lot of people, which I probably should work that more, make that one of my habits I want to change and work into more, and that might change some of that, but I think he hit it on the head when he listed those lists of that conserving energy, obtaining food, find love and reproduce, the connect and bond. I think basically that, for the most part, there's some people that it's bits and pieces of this. We're all a little different, but the underlying idea of what he's got there, I think, hits it pretty square on the head. Because I think even back in Stone Age times and stuff, man still kind of was in groups, to help, you know, protect each other against the big animals, back, dinosaur age and stuff and things like that. And also to help each other find food because somebody might find food somewhere or find something that's good to eat. They can tell the others to help, and also just for companionship. I like my alone times at times, and I love it when I can have that time. But at the other time, I like being out and around people and enjoying that. Even if I'm just sitting and enjoying time with my family. So sorry, I didn't mean to go on forever, but I was trying to get some of my thoughts going there. So there you go.
Yeah, we are definitely animals with instincts. That's what drives us. I think living with a wolf helps me keep that in perspective because she is so instinctual about everything. And it kind of reminds me, but I never, you know, correlated it with habits so much. So yeah, I found that very interesting. And um, it's a shame that some of these things, I mean, we've out technologicalized ourselves. That's not a word, but like now we have all this fake food that some of it has like zero nutrition, and yet we're still driven to eat, and then we get addicted to some of the substances that they put in some of these foods that truly are addictive. And so I'm like you, I don't do breakfast, I rarely do lunch, and I typically eat at night and store up my food for the next day, I guess. But yeah, he brings out some good ways to, figure out which habits you want to change and ideas on how to change them.
Yeah, Dan, you brought up one point that about you know sometimes wanting alone time and sometimes wanting group time, and And I thought that was interesting. If we look back on the ancient times when it was necessary to be a part of a group if you're going to survive, and that without that group you couldn't survive on your own. It was or it'd be very rare if you were able to survive on your own. But yet now in this day and age, you can be alone without any problems because you just pretty much go to the grocery store for what you want, or for that matter, nowadays you can even have it delivered to your house. You could be a complete, inside person, never going anywhere, never associating with anyone if you didn't want to, and still be able to survive. It's just an interesting dynamic change, from the way things used to be to what it is now, and interesting in our evolution to see where that's going to take us. I don't know, but are we all eventually just going to be loners? I don't know. But anyway, go ahead, jump out.
Well, I was gonna on your little point there, how now we can be very alone because we connect by Facebook, Instagram. We can get entertainment and stuff through different various channels now, like YouTube, Hulu, Netflix. We don't even have to go to the movies now. We can, almost buy new releases, within usually a week or so after they come out. Um, you know, uh, Facebook, you can connect, or it's funny how a lot of statistics now are saying how much more um, um, oh god, I can't think of the word I just had. But how distracted and how unsocial as a society, disconnected, that's the word. Disconnected we're becoming because of all these advances. Whereas before, if you needed to talk to your neighbor or friend, yeah, you had the phone, but you had to worry about dialing the number, and you would either have to talk a long time on the phone if they were far away, and you connected that way, or you had to take time out to plan a trip, go visit, or walk out your door, go to your next door neighbor, go sit and talk and visit. And we've lost that connectivity like that. And I think that's something that, and I'm sorry, I keep going back to my movie that I talked about, Wally, where we're fast becoming a Wally world where we have, these screens connected to in front of our eyes, where, get our food delivered and sent. We're becoming these, I hate to say it, these lazy, um, I think slowly but surely, fat, obese blobs, that can't really, we don't really, in some ways, we don't think for ourselves anymore. We don't really take actively, and I think it's, this is something that's, part of these habit things is something to look at too. How are certain aspects of what's being put out there now, how it's driving us to change underlying habits and norms and things that have been around for centuries, and how that's changing now, and where is it pushing man or mankind towards the future, and what is that we're really heading towards.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be really interesting to see the next 100 years play out. Or, well, probably I won't be here for that long, probably, but maybe the next 50 years. I don't know, depending. But yeah, that's definitely going to be interesting. I also liked in here where he was talking at the very beginning of the chapter. He was talking about smoking as a habit, and how a number of folks that he was around that had quit smoking. I guess they all were, heavy smokers, and then but they quit smoking using this one book that was called Alan Carr's Easy Way to Stop Smoking. And in that book, he talks about um, reframing the cues that were associated with that habit and changing the thought process around it, which is really similar to what we've talked about in Shad Helmstedter's book, the What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. And he's talking about just changing your whole thought process by changing the things that you're saying to yourself about them. And because let's see, he says, for an example, Um, so the one person he was talking to about this particular book said it frees you from mental burden of smoking. He said it tells you stop lying to yourself. You know you don't actually want to smoke. You don't really enjoy this. It helps you feel like you're not and you don't really enjoy this. It helps you feel like you're not a victim anymore. So you start to realize you don't need the smoke. And then he says, in the book, it says things like this: you think you are quitting something, but you're not quitting anything because cigarettes do nothing for you. Another one is, you think smoking is something you need to be social, but it's not. You can be social without smoking. You think some smoking is about relieving stress, but it's not. Smoking doesn't relieve your nerves, it destroys them. So it like systematically goes through each thought that you're having about a particular habit and then changes it into something completely different. And I thought that was just really interesting because, like with me and doing the exercise bike, when I first other times when I've gotten into doing exercise, I've decided, okay, I'm going to do this whatever kind of exercise it is, whether it was yoga or aerobics or whatever, going for a walk every day. Um, I kind of had it in my head of this is something that you need to do. It's something that, is going to make you healthier, et cetera, et cetera. And, it never wanted to stick for whatever reason, just the way that I was saying it to myself, being like something I needed to do or I should do or I ought to do was like a thing that actually helped deter me from wanting to do it more than anything else. But then when I have been doing this bicycling and changing it into, this is making me feel great every morning. I feel awesome. It's, I get to spend this time, um, kind of in nature, if you will, with my videos that I watch. And then I do this qigong exercises right before I do that. And, and in those movements is that the words that you're saying to yourself are about increasing your energy and breathing in life force and harmonizing your just balance and being grounded and those kind of things. And just the way that I'm talking to myself about it is keeping me motivated to want to do it. And another thing I've been kind of struggling with recently has been, going to work and doing the trucking. And I've had these like conflicting thoughts in my head about it because it's like really boring and I'm not big on trucking and all these things, but I keep trying to reword it to myself and like change my frame of thought process on it because it's like I get up in the morning and I'm like, ugh, I don't want to go do this thing, and but then I'm like, stop, I have to stop doing that, and I have to tell myself instead, hey, we get to go outside, we get to breathe the fresh air, we get to go do these things, we get to make money, etc., and it helps me to change my attitude toward what we're doing. But I notice that when I start thinking of those thoughts that are unpleasant, then I become less and less motivated. Yeah, exactly. Change your thoughts, change your life. Right. Well, that was other book that we read too, and but yeah, I mean, it's all about what we say to ourselves more than anything else when it comes to our habits. And if we can change what we're saying to ourselves, then that's where we actually can make changes in our lives. So I thought that was just really great that he had talked to those people and they found that book that was telling them just to change how you were thinking about it. So okay, I'll stop rambling.
Yeah, that's pretty much the only way to do it. I mean, all the books, everything is all in our mind. Like everything. It doesn't matter what it is. It's in our mind and the way our mind looks at it, even the interpretation of anxiety versus excitement. It's the same feeling in your body, increased heart rate, increased respiratory rate, but it's a matter of interpretation as to whether you call it anxiety or excitement. And pretty much everything is like that. Even just the, why we're here. The book that I mentioned that I'd like for us to read, Your Plans or Your Soul's Plan. That is, in effect, when you read that book, it is a major mind flip, of how you're looking at your whole human experience. And for me, the way that it suggests that you look at it, it feels better. And when you go back to, say, Byron Katie's book, Loving What Is, that's the key, and all these other books too. That's the key is how are you going to let your mind dwell on certain things and interpret certain things so that you're happy instead of miserable. And depending on how you interpret even being here, even being a human, can have a huge impact on how much things stress you out, on how unhappy. I mean, everybody's going to have emotions and get happy and unhappy about things, but how long are you going to stay there? And especially if it's in an unhappy place, and how low are you going to let it take you before you figure out, hey, I need to change the way I'm thinking about this. I know that sometimes I get into, especially because I sit all day and I'm not even supposed to sit, but I get into, really suffering pain. And I was, I was considering, now that I've had my surgeries and I don't have direct pressure on those nerves and stuff anymore, probably pharmaceuticals would give me some relief. But then there's the whole chance of addiction, and I have a very addictive personality, and I recognize that about myself. So the last thing I want to do, I don't want to be in pain, but I also don't want to be an opioid addict, so I'm going back and forth in my mind. What am I going to do? I can't keep driving in this pain because it's distracting, and it's sometimes it's all I can do to keep from like screaming when I have somebody in the car. That would scare the shit out of them, and but the pain is so intense that it's you know I just have to like sit there and be in under such control. And so anyway, rather than being in this place of, oh my god, I'm suffering, and what am I, I can't do anything about it, and getting depressed, and going down that whole rabbit hole. It sounds stupid, and it sounds like, well, you're just tricking yourself, Catherine, but whatever. I told myself, okay, anytime that I'm in this much pain and there's absolutely nothing I can do about it, that means that extra healing is coming too. And then I named off several people in my life that need extra healing. So it gave the suffering purpose in a weird kind of way, but it helped. Like, I don't know why it helped. It just did. But the point is, it's all in your mind. Like, you can tell yourself whatever you want to tell yourself about any situation and spin it in a positive or a negative way. And it doesn't mean that you can just lie to yourself constantly, because there's something about integrity within ourselves that we have to recognize as well. But you can still, sometimes all it takes is, talking to one person, hearing their experience, and then suddenly your experience seems so much better, or I mean, that's why people write books about their lives and stuff, is to let people know they're not the only ones in these situations, and there's multiple ways out of situations, but it almost always is what you're allowing your brain to tell yourself about it.
Yeah, I was gonna jump into a part of the book where I'm just was perusing and got, and I'm on page 128 just to let you two know. It says your habits are modern day solutions to ancient desires. New versions of old vices. The underlying motives behind human behavior remain the same. The specific habits we perform differ based on period in history. This was the part I was really getting. Here's the powerful part. There are many different ways to address the same underlying motive, kind of like what you were saying, Catherine. One person might learn to reduce stress by smoking a cigarette. Another person learns to ease their anxiety by going for a run. Your current habits are not necessarily the best way to solve the problems you face. They are just the methods you learn to use. Once you associate a solution with the problem you need to solve, you keep coming back to it. Habits are all about associations. The associations determine whether we predict a habit to be worth repeating or not. As we covered in our discussion of the first law, your brain is continually absorbing information and noticing cues in the environment. Every time you perceive a cue, your brain runs a simulation and makes a prediction about what to do in the next moment. Cue, you notice that the stove is hot. Prediction, if I touch it, it'll get burned. So I should avoid touching it. And I was just thinking back to like my roommate when he was teaching her about the stove a little bit and how, things are hot and stuff. And I, as a kid, learned the hard way. I actually touched a hot burner and stuff like that and realized that's hot. So now I understand. But he went about another way. He, let her see it, let it, let it, see that it was hot. Then he put her hand close to it and didn't let her touch it all the way, but she could feel the heat and the difference, and that it's hot, and that when it's that hot, it hurts and it burns. And I don't think I've seen her get burned yet. In any of the times that he's been, cooking and stuff, and he lets her help and stuff, but he always is watchful of her. But it just made me think of that, how sometimes we have to learn the hard way too about certain things, but it builds in that automatic cue. Oh, that's hot. Don't touch it. Be careful. Other times, oh, that's freezing cold, like ice, stuff. Or like in what is it, A Christmas Story, when it sticks his tongue on the pole and gets stuck to it. I never actually did that, but I have licked ice and stuff and had it stick on my tongue and stuff. And but it's interesting how these cues and stuff really play into our lives, and how if we're more observant of them, I think we can work on them making the changes we want to make. So that way, going back to what you were saying, Catherine, our mind is our most powerful weapon in a lot of us, and our most powerful ally, as well as our most powerful enemy against us in all these things that go on.
Yeah, and further on, he actually gives more examples of, how to change your thought process, because a lot of times we'll wake up in the morning and say, I have to do this, or I have to do that, or I've got all these things I must do. And and he talked about just changing one word in that, and, from have to get to. And and then he kind of gave some examples of, like, with exercise, instead of I need to get up and run in the morning, is I get to get up and build energy and get fast. And then like with finances, instead of saying, let's see, oh, it wasn't so much about saving, but he was talking about saving money being associated with sacrifice, but then instead of associating with sacrifices, associate it with the freedom it will give you if you save. And then, like with meditation, talks about transforming your frustration into delight when you realize you have a chance to practice your breath versus being frustrated by the distractions that come up in your mind. And then talking about like pre-game jitters, or for people who you have to give a speech, or anytime you're going to have to do something that is outside your comfort zone, is instead of saying I'm nervous, but to say I'm excited. And and so just changing those little things can make kind of a big difference in just your whole attitude towards something. And, and I've noticed that a lot with myself is just anytime I start to feel like a downwards feeling about whatever it is I'm thinking about, is I kind of examine those thoughts and then go, okay, here I am. I'm feeling crappy about whatever this is. I need to change that around in my mind so that I start feeling, up about it versus down about it. Um, so yeah, that was very interesting. And you also mentioned, Catherine, about lying to yourself. And obviously we don't want to lie about, like saying something that is completely false, but if we're just looking at something from the opposite point of view, then that's not a lie. It's just a change in perspective. And just like with the exercising or with eating or whatever, is sometimes we think that we kind of get it in our head about eating that, okay, we're having to sacrifice having sweets or sacrifice having carbs or whatever it is, which in fact is changing it around to being like, well, I get to eat all of these awesome things that are going to make my body feel so great. And, it's just changing the thought about it versus it, being a lie to ourselves. And I think people struggle with that sometimes too, is they think that if they're trying to tell themselves something different than what they're thinking, that it's a lie. But the truth is it isn't a lie. It's just you're changing your attitude about it. And I think that's really important to realize that.
So Dan, you put a little note in the little chat we have going about how do you remember to make those changes when you're in the moment. Um, for me, I don't like feeling like shit. Like I just, I'm in the moment and I'm realizing I feel like shit, and I don't like that. So that's the trigger. That's my trigger. Okay, I need to change the way I'm looking at this. I need to associate this thing I don't want to do with something that I do want to do, or with a reward, or I somehow, some way, I need to twist this so that I feel better, because I don't like not feeling good. And so that's my trigger. How about you, Samantha?
Yeah, I feel like it's the same thing. It's just when I realize I'm kind of going in a down attitude or a down feeling or just, unpleasant, and sometimes you don't automatically realize it in the moment, but you realize it after you've had the thought or after you've maybe had the feeling for a little while. And then it's like, oh, duh, I'm doing this to myself. I need to stop doing it to myself. What was I just thinking about? And how can I change that into thinking something different? And, and it's not something that you can just change overnight necessarily as far as your habitual responses to things. That takes time, but every time that you recognize it and every time that you change that thought process, then that takes you in the right direction. And like with the trucking for me has been, like I said, it's been a little bit of a struggle, and making sure that I am working towards changing what I'm thinking about it, because a lot of it is habitual feelings of, ugh, I just, I don't like this. I'm bored with it. I'm this, I'm that. And then I'm like, oh, well, I just said 10 sentences of things that I don't like. I need to change it around and be like, okay, so what about this day do I like? And, and it's basically just recognizing what you're doing and then making those changes each time you notice it, and then just every time you do it you just keep on trying. I mean, that's all you can do, because I mean, sometimes changing a habit, even if it's a thought habit, it takes time to make those changes. It takes time to recognize what you're doing to yourself, and just making the effort to change it. If you want to keep feeling miserable, of course you can keep on thinking those thoughts. But if you actually want to change, and you don't want to keep on feeling miserable, then you have to take that little, I mean, I say take an action, but the action is so minor. It's like the difference between, like what he was saying, have to versus get to. And but it does, it takes that little bit of mental work and consistent mental work too, because I mean sometimes you get into like a downward spiral, and and I feel like a lot of people will allow themselves to stay stuck in that because they have, you know, labeled themselves as this or that. And, you know, for instance, like depression for the longest time with me and depression, I was just like, well, I have depression. There's nothing I can do. And that was the lie I was telling myself, not uh you know, not the changing of my thoughts, you know, because I could turn around and sit there and say, you know, it's sunny when it's really cloudy, and that would be baloney. But if I'm feeling gloomy because it's cloudy outside, and I telling myself that I'm feeling gloomy because it's cloudy outside, then that's a lie too, because I'm not feeling gloomy because it's cloudy outside. I'm feeling gloomy because I'm allowing myself to feel gloomy when it's cloudy outside. And in fact, I could sit here instead and say, um, you know, I'm at home. I am not at work. I get to do stuff at home and relax in my chair and da da da. You know, I'll come up with all kinds of reasons why I could feel happy instead of feeling gloomy when it's cloudy outside. So that's my thoughts.
That's exactly why I don't like labels, Samantha. You know, when people get labeled with some of these things, it becomes an excuse to continue bad behaviors, basically. And I'm not saying I don't want a bunch of hate mail, you guys. If anybody watches this, like I'm not saying that people don't have certain situations, you know, but what I see in myself, because I've got some labels that have been given to me, I don't claim them. You know, I'm like, that's bullshit. It was bad behaviors compounded by more bad behaviors by because of the way I was looking at certain situations, and I thankfully, you know, didn't get on all the meds and everything. So that's another thing. Once they give you a label, then they want to put you on some med to fix it. And the meds, some people need meds, okay? There are certain people that need meds, but the majority of people that are labeled and put on these meds really just need to read some of these books and come on here with us and, you know, talk about their shit and not torture themselves and their minds. Because, you know, all three of us here today, if we chose to dwell on the negatives, we could all be, and I mean, we really chose to just forget everything we've learned about changing our thinking, but just focus on the negatives of life and the earth in general right now and everything going on. I mean, we can all be locked up by the end of tonight on some medications, you know, if we could, right? But that's not what we chose to do. And I have been in mental states that I could not change. So I get that. Okay. At that moment, no matter how much I knew about self development or how much I knew about swapping thoughts, there have been moments where I've been in a state of mind that I just couldn't change it at that moment. But a little bit later on, I could. So it's a matter of, um, you know, because we do have chemicals in our body that promote, you know, certain things, and sometimes you're just in such a state that there's, you know, you can't change it in that very moment, but maybe an hour later or maybe even 5 minutes later. And that's the thing, is looking for that ray of light somehow, you know, finding anything that you can appreciate, anything that you can be grateful for, anything um, that brings you joy. And I, people don't, people are so, like, I don't have time to find joy. You know what I mean? Like, people are so wound up that they're afraid. Like, we're eternal souls, guys. All we have is time, right? But somehow we let our minds tell ourselves, oh, we don't have time to take, 2 minutes to just sit there and breathe. Just freaking breathe, guys. Like, how many times do you find yourself in such a state and so uptight? And if you'll pay attention to your body, you realize you're not even breathing. Like, you're barely breathing. You're breathing enough to stay alive, but I mean, you're not. Like, just stop for a minute and just take a breath and just relax for 2 seconds. You have time to relax for 2 seconds, right? And but we tell ourselves we don't, and that's half the problem, is these things that we tell ourselves. And Dan also mentioned in the chat here that a lot of people have issues around finances, and good God, that's true. One of the things, if you're finding yourself resentful over money issues, there is a book that I read called "It's Not Your Money," and it's a quick read. It's very simple, um, but it's changing the way you're looking at the situation. But I think that's a great little book that can help people, and she does some amazing prayers in there. I love the prayers that she had in that book, because it was they're basically like the things that um like she's asking, okay, God, help me. um I can't even think of any of them now, but just read the book. It's a good book. It's Not Your Money, and it will relieve. It'll take. Many of us feel like we're carrying around just 50 bricks on the top of our shoulders half the time. It'll take some of those bricks off, just because you're realizing it's really not. It's not our money. Like, it really isn't our money. I didn't print this money. Maybe I worked hours and earned this money, but if God didn't put those people in my car for me to earn that fare, I wouldn't have that money. So it's really God's money. And God just like shuffles it through us to wherever it needs to go. And we need to quit getting hung up over more. You need more of it to come in and less of it to go out, because it's almost like, if you believe in reincarnation, it's almost like lives. It's just something perpetual that comes in and goes out, comes in and goes out. And we need to quit getting so wired over it. I mean, people, especially in some of these Asian countries, commit suicide frequently over things like that. Things that they just need to do a little mind flip over. So, yeah, It's Not Your Money. Check it out.
I thought you had just unmuted there, Dan. So we're close to the top of the hour. You guys want to just, well, Catherine, you just kind of shared some final thoughts. Dan, do you have final thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, I myself have, like I've posted in chat, got a. It's weird. I've heard about deep cleansing breaths and stuff, but it was weird until this, little talk about it. Um, you know, that like you and Catherine both said, just stop, take that minute. Take that breath, take that, because I have found myself in those moments where I've been tense or this or that, and so focus on that. Like you said, you're just breathing enough to kind of keep yourself going, but you're so wrapped up. But if you stop and take that moment to, just like stop, take a couple breaths, it totally takes you off of whatever is happening. You take those couple breaths, focus on the breathing for a minute, and then you can then say, okay, is this something that's good for me, or is it something that's bad? How do I want to change? and it just kind of, like, oh wow, okay. I've always wondered when people would say take these, deep clean. I was like, I get it now in a sense. But it's interesting how, you know, in how we can get ourselves because of outside influences, and I think we tend to rely on a lot of outside influences, mainly family and close friends, or even people, to help tell us in some ways, oh, that we're supposed to feel this way, we're supposed to be that way, or, this, you know, based on some of the, you know, uh, those little that list he listed earlier in the chapter, the core things that we're trying to, you know, fill. But at the same point, I think we also have to, like we've talked about, take that step back and look at, our mindset and where we're at, and keep it, so we don't get in the mishmash and the muck of it all either, and drag ourselves down into where we put, because we can put labels on ourselves, like you said, the depression. Me as being single, not having, somebody, there to, share, yeah, I have friends and stuff, my roommate, and it was weird. I never, I've never really felt alone until within the last couple of years because of my roommate and seeing how him and his daughter are, and that bond. And I don't have that bond anywhere. The only time I ever really had it was with my grandmother, and but she's not here anymore. But I never really felt alone. But it's weird, over the last couple of years I felt that, because I don't have, like, where my brother and his wife, they're married and they're together. That, I have my brothers and sister, but me and my sister are not close at all. My brother's busy with his life and his family, and so I don't have that one particular person. And so that's been something that's been deeply getting into me over the last couple of years, and I'm realizing as I get older, it's like, what's, and so that's been kind of, and I need to go back to kind of where I was. It's like I've got lots of friends, I got family, I got a lot of love out there. Hang on to that, and look back at that. So that's the label I've been playing with, and that's something, that going through this chapter is helping me. Like, okay, let me go back and focus on, back, change that focus. And there are other things, that I need to stop and take that cleansing breath and refocus and change the focus.
I want to jump back out and say something about breathing real quick. Um, Breath does learning how to use your breath. There's different ways. Like if you're down and you're needing energy, you need to focus on the inhale. But if you're anxious and you're trying to calm yourself, you need to focus on the exhale, because when you inhale, it stimulates the basically the flight or fight response. And you can remember this by, if you were being chased by a Tyrannosaurus Rex or something, you'd be like, right? Huge in breathing, very short exhales. But then when you exhale, that stimulates the relaxation part of your central nervous system. So you're going to, if you're trying to calm yourself, you need to, take a good deep inhale, but then hold it and then really prolong the exhale, because that is what's stimulating your system to calm down. So there's lots of books out there about breathing and lots of videos on YouTube. So if you're gonna, and I highly recommend learning how to use your breath, because you can, like, I have to do it because I'll be driving and I drive long, long hours, and of course I get sleepy. And so I have to re-energize myself, and that's how I do it, is with my breath rather than with caffeine or something. Have a great week, everybody.
I think that was really helpful, Catherine, and I have a video that I was watching. It's about breathing. It's called the Inner Smile meditation. I think that's what it was. But anyway, it was just describing your in the breath that you take in is breathing in energy, breathing in life force, breathing in healing light, etc. And then when breathing out is the breathing out the bad, breathing out the negative energy, the dark feelings, the just the unpleasantness. And and that in and of itself is. And then of course when he was talking about breathing in the light is to breathe it in and see it going through your brain and through your nervous system and through your spine and down into your legs, etc. And then breathing out all of the crap that is getting you down, and the frustrations and anger and all of that, just breathing all of that out too. And so I think there's a lot of different um, ideals on the breathing as far as how you can talk to yourself about them and use that technique to um, improve your attitude, improve your energy, improve everything. So it's awesome, and to get through situations when you feel like you're stuck in something. And I was right there with you, Catherine. I've had times in my life where I've been stuck in an energy, and when I was in the midst of it, it was not something that was easy to get myself out of, because sometimes you get down so low that even the thought of trying to make it change or make that difference in your attitude like puts your dander up. It's like, I don't want to. I'm in this space and I just want to be grumpy right now. Don't mess with me or whatever, and that's your thought process. And you have to wait until the heaviness of that that just really, I don't know what it is, that energy, till it kind of like takes a break, and then you have that little bit of space where you can have your positive thoughts be like, okay, we can change what we're thinking here in this moment, and then try not to drag ourselves back into that space again. And it's a practice. You just have to keep doing it, and each time that you're able to pull yourself out just a little bit, and then the next time you maybe you don't go down as low, and then the next time you pull yourself up a little bit more, and then you don't go as low. That's kind of my thought process on it and my experience. And then once you can get out of that really ugly emotional space, is that then the next time it doesn't overtake you as much, and maybe even the next time you don't even get into that space, is that you just have these little crappy thoughts, and then you're able to be like, okay, I can, I don't have to think those thoughts. I can recognize that I'm starting to think in that direction, and I can change it so that I don't keep going down and down and down. So anyway, we talked about a lot today, guys. So next week we'll be talking about chapter 11, or we may even just try and do this whole section. I don't know. We say that we're going to try and cover multiple chapters in one talk, and then we end up talking the whole time on one chapter. So, but either way, the next section is called the third law, and that's making it easy in terms of changing habits. And chapter 11 says walk slowly but never backward. So we'll see where that takes us. But with that, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing weekend, and we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.